Hi, Jessica. Welcome. Thanks for joining me. It's very nice to meet you. To start things off, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? Tell me about your carnivore journey. How did it all start for you?
Yeah, hi Joseph. Thanks so much for having me. Um, so carnivore was not something that was on my radar just a couple years back, but my daughter was born with a very rare terminal genetic disease called MMIHS. And when we were desperate and looking for answers for her, that's when we found the carnivore diet, or more specifically for her, the no plant gaps diet, which is specifically for the most medically complex of people. So it's a very specific written out protocol by Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride, who is a genius. And she designed it to be the exact same way that our ancestors would heal people. So starting off with just a little bit of broth and gentle meats that are close to the bone and progressing through. So when my daughter was first born, we thought she was healthy. And on day 3 of life, we were ready to take her home from the hospital. And we were packing up our things. And the nurse said, wait, she can't leave. She hasn't had a wet diaper since she was born. And we were like, what do you mean she hasn't had a wet? We've been changing her diapers, but we just assumed that she was having wet diapers. And no, she hasn't had a wet diaper. So they took her to the NICU. She had to be catheterized and decompressed. They had to decompress her stomach and like see what was going on. So they ran all these tests, and they found that she was in total urinary retention. So she could not pee a drop on her own. So she needed to stay in the NICU. And a couple days later, they did a barium enema, and they looked at her intestines, and they noticed that they were not formed correctly. They were the wrong shape. Instead of her colon being loopy like it should be, it had no tone, so it was completely smooth. So that's when I asked if they could bring in a geneticist. I don't know why. I just felt like maybe he could help. And he must have seen this diagnosis before, because he did one blood test and tested her for an ACTG2 genetic mutation, just by looking at the symptoms of chronic urinary retention and the malformed intestines. And he put those two together, and it was a correct diagnosis. So he delivered the news of her diagnosis at the same time as telling us she probably won't live very long. And we were devastated. I remember literally like a few times in my life where I've felt that amount of grief, where the room actually feels like it's spinning. Like you actually feel the world around you turning and you can't stop it. So my husband is a very godly man. And although I was not religious myself at the time, he said to me, don't pay attention to what they said. God's going to take care of this, and she's going to be okay. And I held on to that. And then close friends of mine said, don't look it up. Don't look up her diagnosis, because you're going to see the prognosis and you don't want to hold that in your heart. So I didn't look it up. I didn't look at specifically, I looked at the functionality part, but I refused to read about the prognosis, because again, a lot of these kids don't even make it out of utero, because their bladder gets so big that it pushes on their organs, and that makes them not able to survive. And then a lot of kids pass away in the first year of life, the first couple years of life, and I didn't want to have that in my mentality. I just wanted to stay focused on figuring out what would work for her. So she was breastfed for the first 6 months of life, and then we tried solids, and we tried normal standard American solids, not anything too bad, but I would make homemade vegetable purees and homemade fruit purees, because we thought that was healthy. And she didn't tolerate any of it. She would be vomiting constantly. So we said, let's stop the solids for now, and we'll try again in a couple months. So we continued to breastfeed her. She continued to do well. And then all of a sudden, when we started really giving her solids at 12 months old, that's when the problems started, and she just rapidly declined. So at 1 year old, she looked great. She was healthy, chunky, developing normally. And by 16 months old, she had lost a ton of weight. Her tummy was huge and distended, full of gas that she couldn't pass. She was chronically constipated. She could not go to the bathroom. She was getting clean outs in the hospital where they were giving her tons of Miralax to clean her colon out. It was just horrific. So she ended up in emergency surgery with an ileostomy. And over the next year and a half, she had surgery anywhere from every week to every month. And she had 16 surgeries in that next year and a half. So it was just the craziest journey with her, and we were running out of time. She was declining mentally. She was failure to thrive. She was skinny. She was gray. She wasn't talking. She wasn't playing. She wasn't walking. She wasn't developing for her age. And she just had this big belly, and she was in pain all the time. She couldn't get off the couch. And she was diagnosed with intestinal failure. And she was 100% dependent on TPN, which is like a port in your chest. And they give you just IV nutrition. So unfortunately, that's GMO soy and sugar with some vitamins that are hard to absorb sprinkled in. And that's when I started researching Candida. And I was like, that has to be the cause of all this gas in her stomach. She had SIBO really badly. And once we put her on the diet and like figured out that this was an option, 2 months later, she was a completely different child. She gained 10 pounds. She was vibrant. Her cheeks were pink. Her lips were pink. Her skin had color again. She wasn't gray anymore. Her tummy just deflated to a normal tummy. Her limbs filled out. I mean, she just looked beautiful and healthy. And that's when she was 2.5, and she's 6 now, and she's still doing great. She's been off of TPN all of this time, and she's just a healthy kid living a mostly normal life.
That's awesome, Jessica. Yeah, it's great to hear that she's thriving now, and just short amount of time, when you guys made the change, that's pretty awesome. I'm curious to ask about the MMIHS, right? Is this something like doctors can see or pick up like during pregnancy, or like what are the protocols? Like if they do find it, like what happens then?
Yeah, so they do normally find it during pregnancy on an anatomy scan. My anatomy scan didn't show it, but usually they'll be able to see the distended bladder. So she must have voided right before my anatomy scan, and they weren't able to see it. Sometimes they can also pick up on the malformed intestines, if I'm not mistaken. So the normal protocol for early detection in pregnancy is they recommend abortion, which is incredibly sad. But that's the going recommendation for kids with her diagnosis, because they just assume that they're going to be so medically complex that it's not a viable pregnancy. Obviously, I'm a Christian now, and even at the time, I would have never considered aborting her. But I do know kids who have been aborted because the parents felt they couldn't handle the diagnosis.
Wow. Did you guys had a lot of pushback when it comes to, with your daughter pretty much trying this carnivore, and then with her case, did you guys have a lot of, medical pushback from the medical experts in the hospital?
Yeah, it's been quite a journey with them, to be honest with you. I think it's such a complex relationship that we've had with her doctors. They have supported us at times, not supported us other times. They have run every single test you can imagine, trying to find something wrong with her blood work, something wrong with her bone scans, her bone density, and they haven't been able to find anything. She is perfectly healthy. All of her blood levels are normal. They're perfect. Her blood levels are perfect. Her micronutrients are perfect. The only thing that was a little off was she had a bone scan and her bone density was just a little bit less than it should be, but she was completely dependent on TPN in some of her most important developmental years. So the fact that she doesn't have osteoporosis is actually incredible because a lot of kids with her diagnosis do. But she's in the 80th percentile for height and weight. So she's a big girl and she's beautiful and growing great. But yeah, to keep it short, it has been very complicated with the doctors. However, I've gotten a lot of support from doctors outside of the hospital system where she was seen. And there are many doctors across the country and across the world that I've been able to meet with now who are extremely supportive of the diet and particularly for this diagnosis.
Yeah, that's really amazing. What did you guys what was your reaction when I guess when the doctor said that your daughter will be reliant on TPN, probably her whole life? Did you guys have any reaction to that? Like we don't agree, did you guys have something like that?
Yeah, I mean, the doctors basically treated us like we were in denial the whole time. So when they told us she was going to be TPN dependent for life, we said, listen, like she tolerated breast milk as a baby completely. She tolerated breast milk perfectly. So there has to be food that she tolerates. And they really had like an intervention with us and sat us down and said, you need to accept that she's going to be on TPN for the rest of her life and there's nothing you can do about it. And you need to stop talking about diet. They really tried hard to discourage us, shut us down, and destroy any hope that we had that we would be able to find something that worked for her. And honestly, I think it's a total crime that doctors do that to families and to anyone, even to adults, because you're taking away the motivation to keep searching. And what is the harm in looking for an alternative that could help,
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I just think your story is really incredible. I mean, the whole family, the way you guys trusted your instincts, you guys prayed to God, kept fighting for your daughter when you were told there are no other option. I think that's just amazing. I feel like your daughter is very blessed to have, parents who never gave up on her. And I think what made the difference really is that you and your husband didn't accept this is the only way. Yeah. How is your daughter currently doing now?
She's great. Unfortunately, over the summer, I made her, I shouldn't have, but I made her chicken nuggets with a little bit of coconut flour on the outside. And she had a virus. So she had tolerated them in the past, but she did not tolerate them because she had a virus. So her intestinal motility was too slow. And she did end up in the hospital for a little while with a pseudo obstruction. So that's when fiber goes into the gut, it ferments, it causes lots of gas. And the weak intestine is just too slow to push it through. And so it acts like a physical blockage where the intestine just cannot pass it. So you need to be in the hospital on IV fluids and with having decompression in order to relieve that. So unfortunately, she had a motility test in the hospital and they did not hydrate her properly and her kidneys were injured. So she does still have a kidney injury. She's doing great though. Otherwise, unfortunately, the hospital error is the only thing that has hurt her. But other than that, she's doing great. She's home. she's happy, she's thriving, she's growing. We homeschool, and she's incredibly smart and motivated. She's very active, let me tell you. She's jumping all over the place with her brothers, and like, you cannot keep that girl on the couch for anything. She is 100 miles an hour until she falls asleep. She has more energy than most any other child I've ever met, and I really attribute that to the diet.
That's amazing. I'm really curious. It sounds like you guys were in the hospital a lot during those days. I guess like what I'm trying to ask is, what keep you motivated before even going carnivore? Like, I guess just keeping life together. Did it felt like, more push or being forced just to, like, keep everything together? I think you mentioned your husband is like, is very faithful. So yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much what kept us going, to be honest with you. It was incredibly difficult at times to we were living in the hospital, and at one point my second son, I was managing her TPN during the day. At night, I was doing 2 bowel irrigations a day. So that's where you have to take a long tube and put it into the ostomy to pull the poop out, because it literally just won't come out because she was so distended. So I was doing that twice a day. And her ostomy is only a couple inches from her central line. And her central line can't get any poop on it, or she could get sepsis and die. Literally, like, the risks are so incredibly high. I had to be managing her TPN pump all night long, watching for bubbles, because any air in the line could cause an embolism and you could die. If she pulled on the line and the line came out, she could bleed out. Like, everything was just this life-threatening, 10 out of 10, hypervigilant all the time. If I heard her cough, I'd be running to her with a bowl because I'm waiting for her to throw up. And then I'm telling my husband, get the IV fluids. We have to drive to the hospital right now. Like, put her on IV fluids before we even get in the car to go to the hospital, because she would decompensate so quickly. So all of these things together made it extremely difficult. And I'll be honest with you, there were times when I did feel like it was hopeless, but I clung to the promises of healing in the Bible. And I would just constantly go through the Bible and look for verses about healing. And I would read the verses where Jesus healed the sick. And I just held on to that faith in my heart. I feel like, I don't know where it came from, but it was probably the Holy Spirit that put it in my heart that, no, she's going to be okay, and you need to hold on to this. Because I had no indication otherwise that she would be okay. No indication. There's no reason she should be here today other than God and what he did to save her. So yeah, my husband too, we both got really serious about prayer, and we would literally get on our knees together every night and pray for her. And we would pray for a miracle. We would pray for God to show us the path that he wanted us to take for her. We would just pray. And it all panned out. We even brought her to, there's this beautiful Orthodox church right near where we used to live. And they had a relic, which is, it's the Virgin Mary holding Jesus. And it has been oozing oil of myrrh for decades. And no one can explain why, but it's a tremendous amount of oil coming out of this beautiful painting. So we brought her there, and we had her anointed with the oil, and they gave us some to bring home and anoint her with. And that's when her central line got removed. And we thought there was no way her line was coming out. She could never survive without it. It's just impossible. And 2 months after we brought her there, her line was gone. So we've experienced so many miracles, and just holding on to that faith and watching God work through her, and using my husband and I to give us the answers that she needed. We just kept that faith. And my husband really, like, I have to credit him. He really kept it together when things got hard, and he was my rock, and he was the one that said, we're not accepting this. Don't even put it in your head. Forget they ever said that. They never came in this room. They never said those words. Forget it. God's in control. They don't know God. We do. And we know that he's gonna provide.
Yeah, I think you guys are just really amazing. I'm sensing like, I feel like I'm motivated myself, but and I'm also stressed listening to your story about being in the hospital, for so long, because there's so many people that say like, especially if you go in the hospital, they want to keep you out of the hospital, but you guys stayed in the hospital for so long, because of your daughter. Yeah, I think that's really amazing. How you guys motivated yourself. What motivates you now? Does it feel like it's a sense of duty? Maybe are you guys frustrated with the way nutrition, medical are being handled today? Wanting to spread awareness, wanting to help others? Yeah.
Honestly, when we were in the absolute abyss of her diagnosis, when she was at her worst, I prayed a private prayer, and I literally just got down all the way and put my head down and said, God, I can't lose this little girl. She's everything to me. And I just said, God, show me what to do. I will do it, whatever it is. I will do the work. I can handle anything if it means that I get to keep her. And I promise, if you let me keep her, I will help others do it too, because this is such a hopeless diagnosis for so many families. And about a year and a half ago, I was completely off social media. I wasn't talking to anyone about it. I just kept to myself. And because early on, the response I was getting was not great. And I felt, like no one wanted to hear about this. So I listened to a sermon, and the preacher said, if you make a vow to God, you better keep it. And man, did I feel the conviction of, here I am. I told God that if he saved my baby, I would help others, and I'm not doing anything. So I opened back up social media accounts, or opened them for the first time under Christian Health Collective. I formed my foundation, Christian Health Collective, and got some of my good friends who are in natural health together to join me. I wrote my book in about 3 weeks, and I reached out to Dr. Anthony Chafee, and I told him our story, and he said, come on my podcast. So that was the first time that I really publicly discussed it. And ever since then, I've had about 20 families internationally with the same diagnosis as my daughter reach out to me, work with me on the diet, and every single one of their kids has improved to some level. Not all of them have been able to come off of TPN or all medications like my daughter has, but many of them have. And many of them are thriving, growing, completely independent from pharmaceuticals now. And the ones that haven't been able to come off of everything have at least seen progress and been able to wean down their hours of TPN, come off of these processed G-tube formulas, come off of some of their medications. So I think it's really a process, and some of these kids are going to take longer to heal than others, but they are seeing results, and it's incredible to watch. And what honestly keeps me motivated is that it's so rewarding to be able to see people who had no hope, and for their own child, and they see my daughter and she's a picture of health, and they can picture their child that way then. And I get the before and after pictures. I mean, I see them when we first get started, and most of them look exactly like my daughter did. Huge tummy, tiny limbs, puffy face from the TPN. It causes a lot of edema. And then before you know it, they are these vibrant, beautiful kids. One little girl was getting weekly blood transfusions because her iron was so low. She started on the diet, and she has not had blood transfusions anymore. So these are just incredible things. My daughter was getting 5 iron infusions a week, IV iron infusions, 5 a week. And she hasn't needed an iron infusion in 4 years. So that's what keeps me going. And knowing that I truly feel like God put me in this situation because he knew that my husband and I wouldn't stop. And I want to get this published. And I'm working with a researcher from a major university right now to get it in order and actually publish a case series with all of my clients with my daughter's diagnosis to show that this is an effective treatment option for these kids. And I want it in the medical literature, and I will not stop until it's recognized.
That's awesome. I think you're doing amazing work, helping these families. I feel like your story is more than just health, but it's also helping others and also, raising awareness. But I think it's also about fighting, fight for your child, basically at all costs. I think that's really amazing. Have you had any follow-up, maybe a conversation with the medical professional who I would say like maybe suggested the protocols that didn't work? If so, what was their response?
It's like talking to a brick wall, to be honest with you. The nutritionists still, they're like, oh, well, now that she's doing so well, we can put her back on carbs. And I'm like, you are going to kill my child with your ignorance. And I don't mess around. I am not a pushover when it comes to these people because they will push you around as a parent. They will threaten you. They will try to use their authority over you to coerce you into doing things that you know are not right. And I stand my ground. And I don't let them bully me into doing something that's not right for her. So the response is largely the same. And we actually switched medical providers because the institution we were at were trying to just completely crush the diet, to be honest with you. And it's really sad to see because you could clear out the whole GI floor at that hospital by just giving these kids healthy food. I mean, you would not believe one of the best children's hospitals in the world, and you're watching these children who are malnourished and dying with these huge stomachs, and they're getting pancakes for breakfast with syrup. They're getting ice cream for lunch, and you see them walking around with an ice cream cone while simultaneously they're on TPN with their IV poles, and they can hardly walk because their stomach's so distended. But sorry to say this, but the nurses who are overweight themselves are feeding the kids the same way, and they see nothing wrong with it. So it's certainly not a place that's going to change anytime soon. I think our new institution is a lot more open because they do work with kids who are in intestinal failure a lot more, so they're much more familiar. And to my benefit, some of my clients are already seen at this medical center. So they have watched these kids turn around, and they've said, what are you doing? And the parents say, it's the diet. And they say, keep going because it's working. So that's wonderful for us to have a medical team that's already seen it with some of the other kids that I work with, to be able to bring my daughter there and know that we will be supported. But the medical establishment is a beast. And a lot of it, from a spiritual perspective, it's extremely demonic. And it's not going to change anytime soon. And they do not want this information coming out, because if this diet works for the most medically complex of children, it's going to work for everyone. And that is a lot of patients lost. Already, TPN is $365,000 a year. It's $1,000 a day. So already my daughter's been off for 4 years. So they've lost over $1 million just on her case alone in TPN costs. And the medication, she's never been on medication. She never will be on medication. So they've lost that. They've lost the surgeries. She had millions and millions of dollars in surgeries. She had 16 surgeries. She was life-flighted multiple times. All of that is profits lost to them. And then if you count in the other kids that I work with, it's in the tens of millions of dollars that they're losing just from my work alone.
That's amazing. Yeah. Wow. 16 surgeries. I feel like it's added stress while I'm listening to you. But at the
I
same
know it's
time, you
like
get
it's
yeah.
like
But at the same
PTSD
time,
by
you may
association.
exactly, yeah. But at the same time, you guys are saving, saving lives. This really amazing. Um, Looking back at the start of your journey, I guess your whole family carnivore journey, were there any mistakes you guys made while implementing this? Maybe researching carnivore. How did you learn from them? Did you guys ever had a moment of doubt while trying the carnivore, or maybe like you guys almost gave up, and but you guys kept on going?
Yeah, when we first started giving her these foods, it was a little scary at first because when you have a microbiome that is so incredibly disrupted and dysregulated, when you start to add in these healing foods, you're killing off bad microbes. And when those microbes die, they release a lot of gas, and gas is her worst enemy. So as we're putting these foods in, I'm having to decompress her constantly. And it's a vent tube that hooks up to her G tube. So every 15 minutes for 2 hours, every single time I fed her, I would have to be venting this tube and pushing the gas up out of her stomach. Not fun. And there were moments where my husband and I looked at each other and were like, what are we going to do? Because is this actually making things worse? And it was just a moment, I'll be honest with you. Even after that moment, because we understood the mechanism behind it, the mechanism is fermentation equals gas, right? So when we stop giving anything that can ferment, we're going to stop the gas, we're going to stop the pseudo obstructions. So it was very much, we are going to push through this, but wow, this is very scary. And there weren't any hiccups that happened that were not manageable. So we continued on. I I don't think there were any real mistakes because we did work with a GAPS practitioner. So she was walking us through the steps as we went. And it's really helpful to have someone who understands the protocol because even though she had never seen someone like my daughter before, she was able to say, and the protocol worked perfectly. She was able to say, this is the protocol, follow the protocol. And we did. And it worked out incredibly well. No plant gaps, like the way that we started with it was Amish chicken first. So chickens that are literally pasture raised, they're not eating anything but bugs. We were ordering them from Amish farms. We were boiling them in big pots to make GAPS meat stock. So you boil the chicken for an hour and a half to 2 hours, and then you use all the parts of the chicken, the organ meats, the bones, everything when you're boiling it. And then we would wait for it to cool, blend it, put it in bags, and that would be her G-tube feeds. And we would add a little bit of butter. Now, during this, when we first got started, she was still supported by TPN. So it was not a long time before she was able to transition fully from TPN to these G-tube feeds. And then the next part of the protocol was adding in fermented dairy, which I don't see a lot in carnivore. Like I see Dr. Paul Saladino talk about it, but he's also talking about fruit. So, gray area. But for her, once we started adding in the GAPS fermented dairy, it has to be home fermented for 24 hours. So we're using raw dairy if you can source it properly, fermenting it for 24 hours, and then that becomes a part of her G-tube feed, which gives her carbohydrates a little bit, enough to help regulate her blood sugar. And then and that also helps balance the microbiome. It's a very strong probiotic. So once we started adding that in, her mental state got better and she became much more smart, to be honest with you. And her mood improved a lot because she had all of these good microbes in her gut to help her make hormones, happy hormones, serotonin. And then we started to add in increase the fats. So now with her G-tube feeds, she gets half a cup of the GAPS dairy. She gets a full cup of the meat stock, which we've switched her to beef now. She didn't tolerate beef at first. It was too cleansing for her, so we had to stick to the chicken for over a year. Beef is incredibly healing. You don't realize how much stronger beef is than chicken, so we needed to take a more gentle approach with her. And she gets 4 egg yolks every single G-tube feed. And a tablespoon of butter. So she's getting a tremendous amount of healthy fats, of gelatin and collagen to help heal and soothe her gut. She's getting all of the fat-soluble vitamins that she needs, all the micronutrients from those organ meats. And it's worked out perfectly.
That's awesome. I'm curious, what does a typical day, I guess, for your whole family? Is the family pretty much all in sync with the carnivore? Do you guys keep it consistent? Maybe you can walk me through what you guys usually eat now. Do you guys stay with the same food each day? I mean, for you and the kids?
Yeah, so for my daughter, she mostly gets G-tube feeds because she doesn't want to eat by mouth a lot because she had antibiotics over the summer and it actually did a number on her microbiome. So for her, she's mostly getting her G-tube feeds right now. For my husband and I, we eat a lot of ground beef because it's cheap. So we'll make just like beef bowls with eggs and sausage and bacon if we want. And then we'll do the fermented dairy as well. My sons both eat fruits and vegetables. And my husband and I go back and forth. I'm still breastfeeding my youngest, so I am eating some fruits right now just because I'm starving all the time. And my gut has healed enough that I can tolerate a little bit. But I do go back and forth between like keto, carnivore with a little bit of fruit. I like bounce around depending on how I'm feeling. But of course, I feel my best on 100% carnivore and specifically no plant gaps. When I eat the exact foods that my daughter eats, I am on top of the world. But yeah, for breakfast, I'll usually make like sausage and egg bowls. My husband will eat 10 eggs and like 10 breakfast sausages in one sitting. He's a big dude. So it really has been wonderful for all of us. And it has been a big blessing to be able to eat this way because we're all satisfied. We're all at a healthy weight. And my sons mostly eat meat, even though they're having some fruits and vegetables, and they are just little beasts. I mean, both of them are like solid rock. My 4-year-old is so incredibly strong and coordinated. And when he was little, he was born prematurely because I was still managing all of Riley's stuff. I was so stressed, I just couldn't keep him in. And he ate like a ribeye a day from the time he was like 12 months old, maybe 18 months old. I honestly don't really remember. It's kind of a blur till he was like 2.5. And his body knew he needed to catch up because he was premature. He had a huge growth spurt during that time. He would beg for more steak. We would just keep giving it to him. And now he's extremely healthy. Even though he was a premature baby, he doesn't have any health issues at all. So yeah, we are mostly animal-based, but we do bounce around depending on how we're feeling. When I'm done breastfeeding, we are all like, not my sons, but my husband and I are going back to 100% no plant gaps.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's amazing to hear they're all thriving with the carnivore approach. What is the hardest thing about being carnivore? Like for me, it has been the social gatherings with family and friends, the travel, and also the cravings in the beginning. But for you, what has been the hardest thing? I guess for the whole family. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely travel, definitely social gatherings. With my daughter, you know, when she was very little, when we started this, and we had to teach her that she couldn't eat anyone else's food. She couldn't eat anything that didn't come from mommy and daddy. And that was hard because if she picked up the wrong food, and she did once at a family party, she had a couple of crackers and she needed 4 surgeries because she ate a couple of crackers. She ended up in the hospital for 4 months, 4 surgeries. And she almost died. All of her intestines had to be taken out of her body. That's how bad it was from how bad the pseudo obstruction got. So it was not pretty. That was definitely the hardest when she was really little and she didn't understand. And now it's travel. So like we just brought her to her new hospital a couple of weeks ago, and thank God our truck has an outlet. So we keep her G-tube feeds in a crock pot, the part that is warm. So we plug in the crock pot and we plug in a mini fridge. And that's how we travel with her, because we have to bring her blended G-tube feeds. We have to bring the egg yolks mixed in with the yogurt. Everything has to be brought with us. We have to bring a blender and organ meats just in case we have to make more. Like, that's like not normal to have to go out with. And even on a regular day, if we're going out to like the beach, we have to bring a thermos with G-tube feeds in it with all the other stuff. And then like even for us, we have to bring a cooler with burger patties or bacon, whatever we have. So that's definitely made it more difficult to be around friends and family. Thanksgiving, like my husband's dad does not want to have Thanksgiving with us because we're not eating the stuff that he likes. So he's like, I will see you at Christmas. I am not having Thanksgiving at your house. You're just having turkey. What's the point? So I definitely feel like it's alienated us a little bit, but the health benefits have been so worth it. And everyone is truly supportive of us. It's just not easy for everyone to eat this way. And when guests come to stay with us, like they know if you're staying in our house, this is what you're eating. So we're not going to have ice cream here unless it's carnivore.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said. Even relate to some of the social gathering cases. Yeah, I mean, I've already avoided maybe like 2 social gatherings in the past. Like, I mean, just recently. So, yeah, that's very true for me. Um, if you had to describe the impact of carnivore in your life, what one word would you describe it and why?
Life-saving. It's saved my daughter's life, and it saved my third son's life because I was pregnant with him, and at 16 weeks I started going into preterm labor again, like I did with my second son, and they were afraid that I was going to deliver him early, and I was terrified, and I switched to no plant gaps, carnivore. And I did carnivore my entire pregnancy with him, and I made it to full term. He was born at 37 weeks, but on exam, he looked like a 39-week baby. And he was born at home, healthy, no issues, and he's thriving. So it definitely saved not only my daughter's life, but my son's life too.
That's awesome. Um, if you can give a an advice to someone, maybe just starting, maybe you know what, a parent who have a similar issue with their son or daughter, and they are skeptical about the carnivore because they think they're going to get a heart attack or some other health issue. What would you tell them?
I would say that you have nothing to lose if you have a child like in the same situation as mine was. It was, I think the results speak for themselves. And if you're worried about micronutrients or you're worried about vitamin C, all of my daughter's levels were great. And this diet works because this is the way our ancestors were meant to eat. And for thousands of years, when we lived in villages, the organ meats, the butter, the fat, the stock, the bone broth, that was all saved for the most vulnerable members of the tribe. The breastfeeding mothers, the pregnant mothers, the people who were sick. These things were prized in ancient cultures, and we have completely gotten away from that. So moving back in that direction is only going to help. And I would also say, if you look at like Weston A. Price, if you read his book, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, he talks about how societies that were carnivore, they don't have any dental issues. They don't have issues with formation in their bones. They don't have diseases like we do. And you see a lot of cultures where, even Inuit people, where they start eating like the Westerners and they get sick and they go back to eating their traditional diet and they're healed. So I think that any parent who's scared just needs to do more research and have faith that for thousands of years, this is what helped us and it can help us still.
That's excellent advice. Jessica, how do you see carnivore movement maybe in the next 5 to 10 years? Do you see carnivore in a positive light or in a negative light, or both? Positive meaning more people joining in the community, like the work that you're doing, spreading awareness, more people joining the community because they're seeing more healing happen. And at the same time, the negative light, the meat prices going up, maybe the big pharma blocking the information, so they'll give us false information, censorship. What are your thoughts?
I think it could go either way. I'm scared, to be honest with you. I see what's going on in Britain where they're doing the carbon counts on meat and you're only allowed to consume a certain amount of meat. That doesn't work for me because I need 3 pounds of beef a day myself just to survive. So we're not going to be carbon counting over here. I think the lie of climate change from cattle that we're raising makes no sense. I think that people need to get educated about regenerative farming so they can buy from local farmers. We need to get away from the supermarket model in carnivore, and we need to really support our beef farmers because we're losing them at a rapid pace, not only in the United States, but around the world. We're importing beef when we used to have plenty of beef. The government is overreaching completely and trying to shut down cattle farms. They know that this is what we need. They know this movement is coming. They know that it's getting stronger. And the big voices in the carnivore space are only getting bigger. The testimonies coming out of the carnivore space are just incredible. And they continue to get better and better because people are trying it for more and more situations. And I think it's going to be a big fight, to be honest with you. I think that, of course, pharma is going to try to shut this down. RFK flipping the food pyramid was a big win for all of us. I think it's good validation coming from a governmental agency that, yes, we are doing the right thing. Not that we need it, but it's nice to have that support. So yeah, I think it's a positive thing. And I think on an individual level, people are absolutely going to continue to try this. They're absolutely going to seek this out as a healing modality. Do I think it will be shut down? Absolutely. They're going to try, but we can't give up. We have to keep moving forward. We have to protect this because we know what's right. And again, we've all seen the results for ourselves. Thank God we have medical voices in this space that are also willing to bring validity to the movement. And they will be our strongest advocates, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree with your outlook. At the same time, I feel the same way. I feel kind of scared about the future, but like you said, we must fight for it. Jessica, if people want to reach out or follow you, where's the best place to connect?
Yeah, I'm on TikTok and Instagram. My TikTok is C Health Collect, and my Instagram is C Health Collective. And then my website is chealthcollective.org. So I do one-on-one coaching with families that are starting out. I also do see adults. I do mostly work with like very medically complex kids or very medically complex adults just because I'm familiar with it. But if people have questions, they can absolutely send me a DM, send me an email. My email is info@chealthcollective.org. And if anyone wants to hear my daughter's full story, my book is on Amazon. It's called Dying to Thriving by Jessica Roman. And I did just confirm that I'm going to be at Meat Stock this year in Tennessee. So I will be on the Young Maha panel. And I'm really excited for the opportunity to actually go and meet some of the other people in the carnivore space because I am mostly a hermit. So that will be really nice. But yeah, anyone can feel free to reach out. I get DMs constantly from parents and families, and I'm always happy to help.
That's excellent, Jessica. I'll make sure to post them all in the description so people can reach you. Jessica, thank you again for joining me. I really enjoyed hearing your story and learning about your family carnivore journey. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph.